this just so you have reference to it. If you don't know already, you have a test. I think it's week 6, week 7. It's during your lab. And what I'm going to do is talk about that test and try and introduce it today, and then maybe go over a few sample problems. And then over the next couple weeks up until leading up into your test, giving you some tools and tips on how to successfully pass that test. And the things I'm going to share with you are the thing you're going to have a test like this every semester. So this is your first semester. The 110 test is the only one that you get like middle of the semester. All the other ones are week 1, first day you're in your clinic, your lab setting, or however they have that arranged. And then you'll get that, and you will have to know how to do some of these things. And then I'm going to show you today. And then don't worry, there's review sessions for that as well. So that should help out. So, all right. So a couple things. Let me just see here. Okay. All right. If hopefully you can see what I have posted here. If you have questions, you can unmute, or you can just type it into the chat. I have the chat box kind of off to the side here so I can see it. If you say something, if you want to unmute, you can just go ahead and talk. If you want to do the raise hand thing, that's fine too, but it's completely up to you. But I can see who's commenting. Okay, so like I said, I think it's week 6, week 7. I think it's week 7. I can't remember the exact date. It's posted on Blackboard. You will have a 25 question math test that has to deal with dosage calculations. So I'm going to go through some and practice a few of these things with you, and kind of, like I said earlier, introduce these. But what you need to know is it's 25 questions. It may be on Blackboard. I know there's some practice test type things on Blackboard, so that'd be good to review. I'm going to present this review as if you were doing it paper pencil or paper pen, but it might be online. If it is online, I have some things that I can share with you to help out with that as well. And then I'll get some clarification. I'll ask your instructor and just confirm how you're getting this test administered. But the other semesters, you're going to need to know how to do it on paper anyway, so this will be a good thing to practice. So 25 questions. You can miss 2. Okay, you can miss 2 questions. If you miss 3 or more, you're going to need to remediate, and that usually means connecting with me or one of the other nursing tutors. And then you're going to have to do a retake. And if you don't pass the retake, then they're going to withdraw you from the 110 like course schedule. So you need to pass this test. So not to throw an extra burden of weight and on your mind, but it is important just to kind of practice this stuff, take it seriously. We're going to connect regularly, half hour, a week, and try and kind of get you going. If you want to shorthand all this, I've done these and posted these 110 reviews from last semester, and even maybe in the previous couple semesters. They're on the YouTube channel that I put together. And it's all there's a whole section just called Allegheny 110. And that would be specifically for you to review. And you'll hear a lot of me repeat some of that stuff, but I also will introduce variations of questions. And so that kind of helps with the live format. Also, someone mentioned yesterday they'd like to be able to ask questions. And so that's why I'm trying to make sure I'm available to you so that you can ask live questions. So, all right. So 25 questions. You have an hour to complete the test, and you can miss 2 out of 25. And then as long as you get, I think that ends up being a 92% or better, then you pass. And then you don't have to worry about it until next semester. So, all right. So there's a couple things to keep in mind and some things that you need to know prior to taking your test. You need to know some basic conversions. You have to have these memorized. So you need to know what I have highlighted here. You need to know those. They won't be given to you. You'll be expected to know what those are. So what can be helpful and what other students have done in the past that have been helpful, writing out note cards, or before you sit down to practice any of these questions, write it up, write that list down. So that way you are prepared, because like I said, you have to know it off the top of your head. They're not going to give it to you. You need to know. I'm going to show you how to utilize that information, but you need to know what those are in order to answer some of the questions that we'll get into. So that's step one.
I
Go
have a
ahead.
question, Doctor. You said this one test for a whole semester. After that, we don't have to do the drug calculation test.
For this semester, correct. Yeah. So you get one drug calculation test per semester. So first, second, third, and fourth. But this is the only one that you'll have mid-semester. The other ones are first week.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And then third semester, you'll have a pediatrics dosage calculation, but it's not handled the same way as this test is. Okay. So we'll get into some of these like rules and things like that. I'll talk about them as we kind of move along. I just want to go through and start talking about examples. This is posted on the review site or the OneDrive link that I have shared on Blackboard. This also should have been given to you as a packet. And then if I remember, I'll also post this on to Blackboard in the drug calc workshop like area that I'm kind of disseminating information on to you. You should know if there's any changes or anything, I will send out an email blast to all the 110 students. So just make sure you're checking your email. I had someone, I saw that they tried to connect to Zoom yesterday, so they must not have gotten the email saying that we were not meeting yesterday, but I think it was only the one person. So, all right, we'll talk about rounding and things like that. So there are some equations that are going to be helpful for you. I'm going to encourage you to get really good at a simple process called dimensional analysis. You were probably introduced to it in high school chemistry, or maybe even in chemistry at CCAC or as part of your prereqs. But I will say for the dosage calculation, it's simpler. It's not as complicated as like going from moles to molecules to atoms and all that kind of stuff that maybe you were doing there and that just got you like kind of frustrated. It's pretty straightforward. They're usually just 1 or 2 step conversions, but if you it's the one method that works pretty much for all the sciences. And if you can get it down, and you can be decent at it, you don't have to be proficient, you don't have to be the best at it, but if you can get it down, I can almost guarantee you that you won't miss a single test question as long as your setup is good. Also, if you do miss something up, you can usually see it because you've written it down, and you can see like, oh, okay, I flipped these 2 numbers around and that's where this got mixed up. You'll encounter that when you get into the 3rd and 4th semester because they try and complicate things a little bit. First 2 semesters are usually a little bit more straightforward, so they ease you into the math. But like I said, if you practice now and start now learning just the general steps of what's called dimensional analysis, and I'll show you, then it will help save time. If for whatever reason you have already learned from other backgrounds, the desired or the ordered over have formula, that will work for the majority of your questions, particularly your dosage medication labeled questions. If we're talking about your unit conversions, that doesn't really work. But I'll show you some tips as far as that. You may have, I don't think you're going to get flow rates until next semester. But I'll probably talk about that like maybe in a week or two, just to kind of introduce it to you so you know what they look like in case you see them, because you probably will see questions that are flow rate questions on ATI. And if you go and you're looking at like, you know, Nurse RN or anything like that, like a registered Nurse RN, I think is her YouTube page, and you're getting her like practice information, she might have some things on there that you're not responsible for yet for 110. But if you do run into a question, you're not sure how to set it up, you want some help with it, that's a great thing to ask, or even email me about, and I can, you know, talk about it at one of our review sessions. I'll say this now, if you are unable to attend, like I plan to go back to the Tuesday at 3 p.m. If that's not a time that you can attend, but you have some questions you'd like to ask, or some like, how do I set up this problem, or how to work through this problem, just email me and I will, I'll work it through. It'll be recorded, and then you can see it on there, on the replay. So you can get your questions asked, even if you can't attend in person. So just to let you know that, okay. We'll talk about this fluid calculation. We'll talk about that when we get to it. And like I said, dimensional analysis is the strategy that I usually show. If I told you that when I look at these math problems, I just solve it in my head, that maybe sounds impressive, but it doesn't help you to do well on the test. So me telling you how great I am at this stuff doesn't help you at all, which is why I try and give you some tools and tips to utilize. I personally like to use dimensional analysis when it's something I'm trying to figure out. And then once I got it down, I'll use ordered over have, I'll use some of these other things, because like I feel confident of how I'm setting it up. If you're not there yet, which I don't assume that you are, don't get frustrated. Just know that you're all learning this for the first time for the most part. And I'm gonna do my best to help you get through it. I think last year, after you know, of all the people that were attending, I don't think I had a single one that did not pass the first time. And then the people I connected with after, you know, they were remediating for the retake, they're like, how come I didn't know about this? And I don't know the answer to that, like, because it's emailed, it's posted on Blackboard. So if you know somebody who doesn't know that these exist, please let them know that I'm here to help, and I'll do my best. If you need some additional resources, there's some textbook resources and references, but honestly, Google's a good place to kind of get some information as well. And if you've, you know, tiptoed into looking at ChatGPT, I did ask it to kind of create some practice questions. They weren't helpful for what you guys need to know. So just in case you were wondering, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can just ignore what I just said. That's fine. All right, so before I proceed with some practice questions, do any of you have any questions? Anything that's kind of on top of your head?
I do have one question. I've been looking at some YouTube videos, and it seems like a lot of them say that we need to know what a dram is, or a dram. I might not be pronouncing that correctly. A grain. I'm sorry, a grain. One of our teachers told me that we will not have to know that. So do we need to know that?
So yes, and that's the benefit of me over just YouTube, is those are apothecary units. So the only time you're technically going to see drams is the next time you're at Macy's or one of the department stores that sells perfume or cologne. Look at the label and you'll see that it's measured in drams. Okay. Now drams, so it's a liquid unit. Grains is also another apothecary term that you're not going to see in modern nursing. So there used to be a time where you could get like bare Tylenol or bare aspirin. I think it's aspirin. and it would be measured in grains as opposed to milligrams. That's an outdated system that may still be used in certain areas, but you don't need to worry about it for nursing at Allegheny campus. I'll say that, or actually at any of the campuses, they don't ask you to know drams and grains. So you don't need to worry about it.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. And that's actually a really good question, because I've had students from other like schools, like, because they'll reach out to me via my YouTube channel and they'll say, I need to know how to do grains and drams. Can you work that out for me? And I say, okay, I'll take a look at it. And then I double question them. I was like, do you really need to know this? Because it's not something you would technically need to know for nursing, but maybe for pharmacy, I don't know. So good question. All right. Yeah, I would say if you want to spend time on YouTube, like getting like a very specific review for what you're going to see, go to my YouTube channel, look at my review sessions, and you can see I even go through practice tests. You can see what they look like. The questions I've put together in your practice tests are very, very similar to what you'll see on your actual test. The labels are different, the names are a little bit different, the dosages are going to be different, but the overall context of how the questions are asked are very, very similar. And then, like I said, there's very few, if any, weird questions. Like, no one's going to ask you, a patient comes in weighing 187 pounds. What is his weight in micrograms? That's a very bizarre, unnecessary question for nursing because it doesn't tell you anything. Now, converting pounds to kilograms, that is important to know. And then we'll talk about that with the examples here in a minute. Okay, so let me pull up. So if I say something, I will likely the things that I say are already listed in here. I'm just not going to spend time like reading to you. You can read these things and then you'll see as we move through some of the practice questions, like, oh, okay, this is how you would answer that question or how you would set that up. So let me switch my share. All right, so you can see that I've already written a lot in here. So I'm going to actually, I should have renamed this. Let me just see something here. That's okay. I'm not going to worry about that. I'll rename it later. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and just, I'm going to delete my work here because I want to show you how we do some of these things. One of the things I did, and you can even see, if you go on my YouTube channel, I work through this very, very slowly. And I still finished it in under an hour. I think it took me 40 minutes to go through this very slowly. So what I want to focus on today is, and you'll actually see these changes because it gets saved and updated. So if you're wondering like, oh, I don't have this in front of me, like you'll be able to see it. Just know that I often change it because it's a work in progress. Okay. So let's talk about our basic conversions. And by basic conversions, that just typically means you're going from unit to unit. And the first 5 or so questions are exactly that. They're called basic unit to unit conversions. And you have 2 types of conversions that you'll be dealing with. You'll have metric to metric conversions. So we'll just say metric to metric. Is our first type of conversion. And what that means is you're going to go from milligrams to grams. You're going to go from micrograms to milligrams, and then vice versa. So we could go in the reverse. We can go from grams to milligrams. We might go from milligrams to micrograms. So you need to kind of revisit, become proficient again at doing those conversions for the metric system. Okay. The other setup that you're going to have is you're going to go either from metric to what's called like the American Standard or household units, or you might go in the reverse direction. So what do I mean by that? You might go from milliliters to ounces, okay? Or in reverse, ounces to milliliters. You might go from milliliters to teaspoons or tablespoons. So I'm just going to write T or T. Okay. So those are your conversions. The other one is you might need to go from kilograms to pounds. That's an LBS. So I'll just write pounds next to it, just so you, in case you come back and you look at that. Okay. Because I know it looks like 165, but pounds. Okay. So kilogram, normally the conversion that I try and focus students working on is going from pounds to kilograms. Okay. Because that's usually what you would be doing in a clinical setting. You know the patient's weight in pounds, you need to convert pounds to kilograms, and then you can factor that into the medication, because some medications are considered what are called weight-based medications. Okay. Now, another thing to keep in mind when you're doing just basic unit conversions, particularly metric to metric, you should not be rounding. Okay. When you are doing basic metric to metric conversions, don't round. Okay. Do not round metric to metric conversions. And the clue is it'll be doing this. It'll say, just give the equivalent unit. Okay. When you're going from metric to household or household to metric, because you're going into different units of measurement, you may need to round. Okay. Now you may not always need to round, but if you do need to round, this is where it's okay to do. When you're here, don't round that. And I'll give you some examples of where people have rounded and gotten the question wrong, and where people have not rounded and gotten the question wrong. And I'll try and create examples so that way you can see what this looks like. All right, so let's look at the first question. The first question is just asking you to go from 1.75 grams to milligrams. And this is where, like, I would tell you, okay, well, the answer is 1,750 milligrams. I'm done. Okay. Now, how do I know that? Well, a couple of things. There's a couple of things that I didn't illustrate, but there's always the moving the decimal. If you got really good at moving the decimal and you remember your base 10, and you know that 1 gram is the equivalent to 1,000 milligrams, that's what I did. I said, okay, I moved my decimal and I know that it's 1,750 milligrams. If you're wondering, do I need a comma here? You don't need a comma there. Okay. You can put one there if you want to, but it's not necessary. How many times does this question get answered wrong because students move the decimal to the wrong place? A lot. It happens a lot. So how do you ensure that you're not going to make that mistake? So let me see what I can share with you. So give me one moment. All right. So this is where I think dimensional analysis can come into play, whether you use it or not. What I ultimately care about is that you're getting the right answer. Okay. So this is a good place to practice, though. If you know the right answer, this is a perfect place to start practicing your dimensional analysis because you already know what the right answer is. So what I would do is, if I was doing this via dimensional analysis, I would start with what I'm given, the 1.75 grams. You can put it over 1 if you like, just to kind of act as a placeholder. And then I would set up a conversion. The first thing I need to know is, can I go directly from grams to milligrams? And the answer to that is yes, because we know that there are 1,000 milligrams in 1 gram. So we know that direct conversion. If I asked you, like, right off the top of your head to tell me what is the conversion between grams and micrograms, you may not know that off the top of your head, and that's fine. And notice that that wasn't something to memorize. However, you know how to go from grams to milligrams, and you know how to go from milligrams to micrograms, so you could work it out. So with dimensional analysis, if I'm just starting out, I'm kind of like either rusty because it's been a little while since I've done dimensional analysis, or because I hate dimensional analysis, quit saying that word. The whole thing is based off of just setting this up so you can see that you've done you're putting the numbers where they're supposed to go before you do any kind of calculations. That's where I think the value in this comes in. Like when I look at this 1.75 grams, I don't question myself as far as did I move it over enough times or anything like that. I know what it is. I feel very confident in what that is. I'm not wrong when I do that. If you're there already, perfect. Don't change what you're doing. I'm just showing you another tool and that I think will be helpful later on if you ever get stuck on how to solve a problem. All right. So the first thing I say is, okay, I want to get rid of grams. I want to convert to milligrams. So before I write any kind of numbers, what I'm trying to do is just cancel out my grams, cancel out the G. And then because we have to memorize it, we know that 1 G is the same thing as 1,000 milligrams. Before I do any kind of math, I'll just cross out my units just to make sure that everything's like crossed out. And the only thing I'm left with is what I'm looking for, which is milligrams, right? That's what I was looking for. So I didn't mention this to you, but on your test, you are allowed to use, and they'll provide for you a basic 10 key calculator. And so all you have to do is type in 1.75 times 1,000, and you'll get that same answer that I got listed up there, which is 1,750. So how about another example? Oops. See if I can do that. So let's say I'm going to go from, so this, I'm just making this question up. Let's say I'm going to go from, because you'll see things like this. Let's say I'm going to go from 325 milligrams, and I want to know how many grams that equals. So go ahead and I want you to try it on your own. And if you already got an answer, great. Just plug it into the chat. Just type it into the chat what you got. And I should also add, if you're not confident in your answer and you want to just send it as a direct message that where only I see it, I won't call you out whether you get it right or wrong. I won't call you out. But if you want to answer and aren't confident in your answer, in fact, if you just don't know, please just as a direct message just say I don't know, and then I'll make sure. All right, so I got plenty of answers here. Good. I'm starting to see them kind of trickle in a little bit more. So if you got 0.325 grams, you did this correct. For the two things that you did correct, you moved the decimal or you divided by 1,000 appropriately, and 325, and you didn't round. Most oftentimes when people miss this question is because they answer it 0.33. We don't round basic unit conversions. Now, some of you might be like, well, how I was like, I got, I didn't move the decimal over enough places. What did I do here? So first of all, where is your decimal? Your decimal is right here by the 5. So the 325 milligrams, that's actually where your decimal is. Now, because we're going from milligrams to grams, we're actually going to move the decimal to the left 1, 2, 3 places, which gives us a new answer of 0.325. If you're still not feeling really good about that, then let me take you through the dimensional analysis. And again, even if you got this right, it's still a good thing to practice. So what are we doing here? We're trying to convert now milligrams to grams. It's the opposite of what we did in the original question where we went from grams to milligrams. So I put what I'm trying to get rid of in the denominator of my conversion and what I'm converting it to here. Now, the only way this works is if I have if I know what the conversion factor is. Okay. So if this was like going from milligrams to grains or to drams, or like what Julian had talked about previously, we don't know that conversion factor, so we wouldn't do that. Okay. Plus it would be grains. Drams would be more like going to milliliters. Anyways, so what do we know? We know that 1 gram is equivalent to 1,000 milligrams. Okay. So we basically have set this up but notice that now it's 1 over 1,000 as opposed to being 1,000 over 1. So what do you do math wise? Well, you take 325 times 1, which is 1. Then you divide by 1,000 and you get the 0.325 grams. Okay. Now, if you, because I did see, and it could have been a typo, I saw the 32.5 grams. It would be 32.5 grams if we were only moving over one space, right? So if it was 10, if 1 gram equaled 10 milligrams, then that's where we are. And I think decigrams is 10. So 10 decigrams is 1 gram. But the reason I don't really know that off the top of my head is because we don't use decigrams and centigrams. We use milligrams and micrograms. And if you get really fancy, you might get into nanograms, but not at CCAC, at least not while you're here for the 4 semesters on these drug calc tests. All right, so that's metric to metric conversion. Let's look at a metric to household and a couple examples of that. So remember, with metric to metric, do not round, especially when we're doing like our basic unit conversions. But when we're going from metric to household or household to metric, you may need to round. We'll find out if we need to round in the context of when we're looking at things. Now, I will say, just from the standpoint of like hospital or clinical setting, most likely you're always going to be converting household to the metric system because the universal system. Oh, go ahead.
Doctor, can you explain the household? What's that like? It's like a teaspoon, whatever. What's the household? Can you explain me more?
Yeah, what I wrote over here. So household is ounces, tablespoons, teaspoons, pounds. Those are all considered household units.
Oh, the measurement what we measure at home. Okay, like household. Okay,
you got it. Yep. Yeah, what you measure at home, you got it. That's what. Yeah. You could also lump in pints, quarts, cups. You don't need to worry about that here, at least not yet. But I'll probably show you a few of those things too, because other campuses are required to know about pints, cups, quarts. But it's not that big of a deal. It's just something different. But anyways, so the most common conversion you're going to do is going from household. Patient's going to come in weighing, like question 3 says, 128 pounds. You need to convert the patient's weight in pounds to kilograms because they're going to be put on a medication that encompasses their weight. And you might be saying like, well, this seems new to me. I've never heard of that concept. And it's like, well, a lot of times like over the counter medications are not necessarily weight based. Okay. You know, they might tell you like, you know, Tylenol, you know, two every 4 hours or 2 every 6 hours, don't exceed 6 in a day. And then if it's a kid, they might say, oh, you know, there's obviously children's Tylenol, and they would say like, you know, probably similar, but the dosage is less, and it's not like weight based. Although sometimes if you look at the children's Tylenol, it'll say like for children under 40 pounds or for children over 40 pounds, it'll give you some different kind of rules to follow. And if you're not somebody who looks at the labels, look at the labels, like A, because it'll help you out with your nursing career, and B, it'll also help you from preventing you from overdosing or underdosing with things. And that could include not only over-the-counter medications, but it could also include like supplements and things like that. All right, so let's look at this 128-pound patient. So the first thing you need to know is that 1 kilogram is equal to 2.2 pounds. Okay, so that's in the list that's up there, or on the review sheet. You need to know that off the top of your head. So I'm just letting you know. A lot of times when I look at this and I see these questions, I take the 128, I divide by 2.2, I get an answer, and then I write my answer down. Okay. So let me walk through this one. So just so if, in case you're wondering and you're on bated breath, like what this is, the answer to this is 58.2 kilograms. That's a rounded answer. So I'm going to show you what I did. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start this problem exactly as I've been starting all my other problems. I'm going to take my 128 pounds and I'm going to set up a conversion factor. I don't want pounds. I do want kilograms. Okay. So I can cancel out my pounds. And I know that 1 kilogram is the equivalent to 2.2 pounds. So if you're ever wondering, do I multiply? Do I divide? If you're ever like mixing those up, this is where dimensional analysis kind of pays its weight in value, in that it helps you to illustrate or visually show you where things are supposed to go. The challenge obviously is, well, how do I do this? And I will just tell you, practice. Practice is probably the best approach to doing these. And then even if you have the same practice sheet and it's the same practice problems, keep practicing your setups. The setups don't change. The numbers are the only thing that change. All right.
For this conversation for roundup, like, you know, does it in the question, it will ask us like round up to like 10th or 100th, or we need to know. It doesn't say in the question, we need to know, or the question will tell us. You know, some of the question tell us round up to the 10th or 100, you know, as a whole, whatever the question it really asks, or no.
So you need to know that any number greater than 1, you round to the nearest 10th if needed. And any number less than 1, you round to the nearest 100th if needed. So for like this example, when I do 128 divided by 2.2, I'm going to get 58.181818. It just keeps going on and on, 18. Okay. Because 58 is greater than the number 1, I'm going to round that number to the nearest 10th, which is 58.2, right? So I look at the 8 and I see that 8 is greater than 5. I'm going to round up to 58.2. If you have a question and it's not a metric to metric question, and you get something that's like 0.125 as your final answer, that is a question that you would round to 0.13. Okay. You do not do that for your basic unit to unit conversions. Metric to metric conversions do not round numbers like that. You only would do that. And there's examples, and I'll give you examples as we kind of go through this and practice these more throughout the semester. But that comes with practice. But the rounding rules are stated in the the review tips section. Also, it's in your blueprint. If you see the blueprint, you'll see some information in there. about rounding.
We have the blueprints in the Blackboard, or
I don't know how it's disseminated to you, but in the past it would have been in like your packet, like some sort of packet you would have received that kind of outlines your course for the semester. So I don't know where that information is, but I can tell you that I've provided that information for you on the OneDrive folder. Yes, Taylor, to answer your question, yes. So if, first of all, as long as we're not doing a metric to metric conversion, but if let's say we're doing metric or we're doing household to metric, so pounds to kilograms, which is the first two examples you give, 58.25 we would round to the nearest 10th. So we'd round that to 58.3. For 40.38, again, we'd round to the nearest 10th, 40.4. For as long as we're not doing basic metric conversions, that we would round to the hundredths for the 0.234, so it would just be 0.23, and then for the 0.535 you'd round that to 0.54. And like I said, I'll give you examples as we move along, but yes, they likely won't tell you, at least not all the time. Sometimes it might be in the context of the question, round your answer to the nearest 10th, but it may not always be there, which is why I'm telling you, you need to know it. Good question. All right, so let's do another weight question, because those are good to practice. All right, let's say we have somebody that is, what's to say 235 pounds. Okay. And I want to know how many kilograms that is. So I'm going to take my patient, my 235 pound patient. I need to make some room here. My 235 pound patient. Actually, go ahead and you tell me what your answer would be. I'm sorry, that's what I would prefer that we do. That way I can make sure we're at least getting some answers here. So 235 pounds, how many kilograms would that be? And I'll start the setup here. All right, so that the answers are starting to come in. If you got 106.8, that's what I got as well. And again, I'm just going to set it up the same way. 2.2 pound, 1 kilogram. So 235 divided by 2.2. And that'll give you the 106.81818181. And you would just round it to the nearest 10th, which is 0.8. All right, let's look at another. So this one, we're going from metric milliliters to household ounces. So you need to go and like the first question is, do we know how to go from milliliters to ounces? The answer is yes. You need to know that 1 ounce is equivalent to 30 milliliters. Okay, so you need to know that. Okay. And then while we're on that topic, 1 teaspoon is 5 ml and 1 tablespoon is 15 ml. So a couple things to pay attention to next time, if you're preparing a recipe and you're using your teaspoons and your tablespoons, they are also typically marked with the 5 and the 15 ml respectively. So it's another way to kind of anchor it, like remembering what that is. I I think it's 1.5 ounces is what is equivalent to a shot. Like, so if you get a shot at the bar or something like that, I think it's 40 or 45 milliliters of the alcohol in whatever you're getting it, or as, you know, or straight. So just some things to kind of connect these things. Okay. All right. So if you get a double, that's a 3-ounce shot. Anyways. Okay. So I'm going to take my 90 milliliters and I'm going to convert this to ounces. So the first question is, do I have a way to go from milliliters to ounces? I do. Milliliters, ounces, 1 ounce, 30 milliliters. And if you do this in your head, then you're doing everything right. Okay. I like to keep these very simple for practice purposes. That way you can get in the practice of doing that. If this happened to be like 3.275 ounces, you would round it to the nearest tenth and say 3.3 ounces. If it were 0.457 ounces, you would round it to 0.46 ounces. You would follow rounding rules when you're going from the metric to the household or household to metric. Let's do one more example here. And let's see here. Let's go in the.
Missed the question number 2, doctor. I think we didn't do the number
Yeah,
2.
I'm gonna let you work on that on your own.
Okay.
Yep, because there's a key to this. So yeah, I'm skipping around because I'm gonna let you work through some of these. All right, so yeah, okay, so for this one here, let's actually go in the reverse direction. Let's say I have, let's just say I have 2.25 ounces, so 2.25 ounces. We'll just keep it simple for now. So 2.25 ounces, and I want to know how many milliliters that is. So on your own, go ahead and when you get an answer, go ahead and put it in. So that's 2.25 ounces is what that says. Okay. I think we're starting to get somewhere here. So 67.5 milliliters is the right answer. And then if you are stuck and you want to just double check your work, this is what I would do. I would take my 2.25 ounces over 1. And I want to know, can I go from ounces to milliliters? I can. Ounces, milliliters. Okay. 1 ounce is 30 milliliters. So here now I'm multiplying by 30. And that's what will give me my 67.5 milliliters.
Doctor, I do have 2 quick questions.
Yeah.
On the test, like I see, for instance, number 4, 90 milliliters equals blank ounces. So whenever we're writing in the answer, would we have to put in 3 OZ, or would 3 be okay because ounces is already written there?
Right. So if it's written like this, that's the unit's already given to you. So you would just write the number.
Okay. And then also I see whenever you're doing teaspoons and tablespoons, sometimes you're just putting a capital T and a lowercase t, and then sometimes it's TSP, TBSP. They're both considered correct?
So they should be, but I would say write it out. The little TSP and the big TBSP is probably the better the better thing. But I will say that, like, if you look in recipe books, a lot of times they write little t, big T. So that might just be more like the common usage of those. Very infrequently are you putting tablespoons or teaspoons as an answer. The exception to that is here, it tells you how many teaspoons will you give. So like you would put your answer in teaspoons. I would either write teaspoon or TSP just so that there's no question that you know how to answer that.
Right. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, good question. You're welcome. All right, so I'm gonna leave a few more of these for you to practice on your own. And like I said, we're gonna do this in phases, because I like to kind of slowly introduce some of these things. I'm gonna go through, this is the Word document version, so I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna delete the things that have already been worked through. And then we'll continue to work through them together. I plan to do a similar review like I did today, tomorrow at 3 o'clock. And then I'll start up newer stuff next week. So if we are able, if the same, students are on for tomorrow, then I'll just kind of move along. But I know there's a few people that couldn't come at this time, which is why I opened up the Thursday at 3 p.m. So all right, any last minute questions?
This is all for today.
Yeah, we're just gonna we'll try and keep it short and sweet, about an hour, sometimes less, depending on the questions I'm getting. I'm not gonna, because we have a lot of time to kind of get through these, I don't want to spend I don't want to spend a whole time, like more than an hour, like kind of going through that. Plus, I'm sure you guys have places to go just like I do. I am not emailing this, and technically it's the link to this is on Blackboard. It's the link to the OneDrive folder that you were also emailed. So if you click on that link, it pulls up a OneDrive folder. If you click on where it says Allegheny, then 110, and then that's where you'll find what I'm working through.
Like,
all right. Oh, go ahead.
For this, for the first drug test, for this exam for whole semester, and is there any more new questions, or this is all the model of the question? And we have to come back to for the next class again, or this is all we need to know?
Oh, I mean, I haven't covered, it's completely up to you. If you can go through the practice tests, these are not required. These are just to help you out because you're not going to get any other kind of review for the 110 test. But if you can go through the practice tests and you know how to do all the questions, then great. But no, we didn't cover labels. We didn't cover dosages. We didn't cover marking a syringe. There's a whole lot more to cover. That's why I don't have time to do that today. But you can come in and out as you need to or want to. This is completely optional for you.
Okay, you said tomorrow at 3 o'clock, right?
I'll be here tomorrow at 3 and then Tuesday at 3 as well. Okay,
tomorrow we'll repeat the same thing, or we'll go for the other question?
It just depends, because like I said, there's people that couldn't attend today that are going to attend tomorrow. So I'm going to probably start off with the same. I would say it's going to be similar content. I'm just going to focus on unit to unit conversions. And then I'm going to save the next phase of things for next week. So if you're on here today, you feel pretty good about it, I would say you